McCarthy's probably like begging him, please don't do the press conference. All right, folks, Ivan Raikling here live outside of the illegitimate, occupied, belligerent territory known as Washington, D.C. Yep, right there. We're on the Kevin McCarthy side of the house for now. We'll see if the Freedom Caucus will go ahead and vacate him. If you don't know what's going on, go ahead and take a look at Matt Gaetz' Twitter feed. Rep Matt Gaetz, his official one. He's basically is about this short of vacating McCarthy. If the Freedom Caucus, well, we'll just stand by and make this go live until the Freedom Caucus conducts their press conference. So let me flip the camera and just listen in, if I can even flip the camera. There we go. The water's hard. True friends and allies. So, y'all want to say anything today?
Anxious to see what happens.
Do you have any indication on what this is going to be about?
Well, it's the Freedom Caucus, and I heard what Matt Gaetz had to say earlier today. So I heard part of what he had to say earlier today, so it could be any number of things.
Yeah, he basically put Kevin McCarthy on notice that if he doesn't fulfill all of his responsibilities based on the agreement that he had with the Freedom Caucus, then they're going to vacate him. I didn't hear him say by what time he has to comply.
They're supposed to be out here at 3, so we should know in 7 minutes because they're always on time, right?
So maybe he gave him until 3 p.m. That would be fantastic. And again, I always said this from day one. Kevin McCarthy will do the right thing with the necessary force applied. Political force.
Does that make it the right thing?
No, he won't. He will not do it by default. He has to be motivated.
Nice choice of words.
Very intentionally motivated to do the right thing.
Yeah, it's going to be out here. Hopefully. He will be motivated properly.
I like to motivate people.
I wish they would be motivated to vacate the Speaker of the House and the President.
All right, looks like
Motivated to have J6ers testify in front of Congress. I wish they would be motivated to send some of their staffers over to watch what goes on in the DC or release the tapes. Any of those things would be amazing. Oh, yeah, right? Yeah. Ouija have like a big plan. Yeah.
Hey, so I'm out here at the Triangle, south side of the Capitol, which is on the House side. Matt Gaetz basically just did a speech on the House floor, just short of saying that he is going to vacate McCarthy. He said he will, unless he immediately complies with what the agreement was, with what the Freedom Caucus laid out in January. Freedom Caucus in about 5 minutes is scheduled to do a press conference right outside here. I'm standing here with and Miss Reffitt, the info. I think it might be better if I do it after the press conference. Okay. Thanks for being kind of flexible, because I just caught wind of this about an hour ago, and I happen to be in the area. Not yet. I'll take a look right now while we're waiting out here, because there's a pretty big gaggle here. Here, let me pan the gaggle. We're probably looking at 30 to 40 folks that are out here.
This is Dan. Oh, okay. We have talked about. Yeah, thank you. Dr. Roberts is president of the Heritage. Good to see you. Hey, that's great news. Thank you very much.
Yeah, what he could have done, and instead he fired the architect of the Capitol so that he would have no leverage to release the tapes. And instead Pelosi continues to cover it up with Schumer because they have their Capitol Police chief in play right now still.
We're doing better with this than we are with
Sounds good. Yep, see it. You think they like my stickers on the back of my iPad? Can I get you a small one?
It's funny.
It's pretty good. We got Mike Lee, Chip Roy, Senator, Congresswoman Bolbart. Two-minute warning to vacate the chair. Oh, yeah. We got some senators here, huh? You're a warrior. I love you. All right, so what you're watching here is Congressman Chip Roy. Looks like he's talking to Senator Mike Lee. We got Senator Scott, looks like in the background. Maybe he'll be replacing the brain-dead Senator Mitch McConnell, but we'll see. But, you know, everybody's a toxic, feckless, stone-cold coward simp around here. So
That's how you really feel there.
Matt Gaetz, obviously, is one of the few gems, diamonds in the rough, if you will, that actually listens to his constituents. There are a few other ones out there, and pretty much only in the Freedom Caucus. So I don't know what's going on here. Freedom Caucus is mingling with some of the more weaker CCP-inclined Republicans. But we'll see. Call it how it is.
You do. You absolutely do.
Then we got Scott Perry. He's the chair of the Freedom Caucus, House Freedom Caucus, Pennsylvania. Nancy Pelosi weaponized against him, and let's see what he does. And let's just see if he does anything in terms of retribution against Nancy Pelosi, which is long overdue. We'll see. We'll see. Hey, Congressman. Congressman Perry.
Sure. Good to see you.
Yep.
Nice to see you back in DC.
Hey, how you doing?
Vacate the chair, fellas, gentlemen. Congressman. Congresswoman.
Hi there.
Keep up the fight. All right, Congressman. All right, some of the good ones here.
Here we go.
Today is about the American people. We're not here to talk about brinksmanship. No one is here interested in a pause in government funding. What we're interested in is taking the Biden poop off the neck of the American people. In the 5 weeks I've been gone, just give you a quick summary. Card check rolling out of the Department of Labor. The Department of Justice, of course, continues to prosecute their political enemies while leaving criminals run rampant across our streets. The president disrespected and insulted the people of Hawaii after their houses were burned down. Alejandro Mayorkas is literally daring us to impeach him. He can't be bothered with whatever the law says.
Please do it. Please do it.
The people that I represent, American citizens, are now being forced to compete against workers, people coming illegally in the form of hundreds of thousands every single month across our southern border. The people in the city that I represent, the capital city of Harrisburg, are dying from fentanyl this week. And there's not a damn thing being done about it. Not a damn thing being done about it. We're sick of the theater. We're tired of the Washington theater. Go home and tell them anything. Tell them we're working for them and all that stuff. Nothing we're doing is changing their lives. A government that tells you you can't buy the stove you want or drive the car you want is a government of tyranny. And there's no freedom in America. We're not interested in a continuing resolution that continues the policies and the spending of the Biden, Schumer, Pelosi era. And we're not going to vote for it. We didn't vote for it last December, and we're not going to vote for it now. So we're here to tell you the American people are sick of it. They can't afford their electricity bill. They can't afford the gas bill, and they damn sure can't afford the grocery bill. We're here to put our foot down and say, for this place right here, it stops now. The power of the purse is in the legislature. And the way you stop all this craziness of the Biden administration, the tyranny of the Biden administration, is to stop giving them money. With that, I turn it over to the great senator from Florida, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Chair Perry. So first off, let's look at what's going on here. We've had a 1.8% increase in our population since 2019. The budget's up 55%. Would anybody do that with personal life? Nobody would do that. That's $400,000 of new spending per new person. It's unconscionable what they're doing. We're never going to get inflation under control. We got now if you're going to get a mortgage, it's over 7.5%. If you're going to get a car, your interest rate's at the highest in 23 years. If you have a credit card, the highest interest rate on credit cards, I think, in history. So the Biden administration, their economics is hurting all of our families. I thank God for what the Freedom Caucus is doing in the House. If they wouldn't stand up, nobody's standing up. They stood up on the debt ceiling, and they fought for a great bill. Unfortunately, it didn't end up that way, but they fought for a great bill. We've got to stop this insanity. On top of that, in my state, we've had 2 hurricanes. I can't make sure the federal government's funded to even take care of disasters. And the federal Secretary of Agriculture won't even give money to my farmers, my ranchers, for the hurricane 11 months ago. So I have a bill, and we're going to get that done also. But thank God for these people standing up here, but this will not change. Now I turn it over to Chip. Thanks, sir.
Vacate McCarthy.
Well, thank you, Senator. Thank you to my friend, the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, Scott Perry, and all my colleagues here at people from across this country who are fed up. They're fed up of a government that's out of control. And here's the thing. Our founding fathers, creating this country, created separation of power. It is incumbent upon those of us with election certificates, particularly in the House of Representatives, but also the Senate, to stand up at this end of Pennsylvania Avenue and hold the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue in the executive branch accountable. A president and an executive branch that is out of control. My question for my colleagues, particularly my Republican colleagues, is when is it enough? When is it enough to stand up and do what you campaigned to do and use the power of the purse to stop this administration from trampling the American people? Spending is out of control. The federal government will spend $2 trillion more than it takes in this year to fund the very agencies and programs at war with the American people. Inflation is opposed to 17% across the board tax on Americans. We've added $1.5 trillion in debt since the so-called debt deal. We are now spending more on interest on the debt than we are in defending the United States of America. The Department of Defense is threatening our national defense by turning our military into a social engineering experiment wrapped in uniform. COVID tyranny is rearing its ugly head again. It was announced today, CIA whistleblowers told the COVID Select Committee that the CIA bribed its own analysts to deny the Wuhan lab leak theory.
I called it 3 years ago.
Yesterday, the FDA approved new COVID-19 boosters for children as young as 6 months old, and we haven't even had clinical trials. We're funding a healthcare system broken by Washington and big insurance while average Americans foot the bill.
energy. We're destroying our ability to have reliable energy. The Inflation Reduction Act's $1.2 trillion handout to unreliable wind and solar, big corporations and rich leftists, and the Chinese Communist Party remain in effect right now. DOJ is advancing a politicized form of justice, targeting former President Trump, targeting dads like Scott Smith in Loudoun County. Thankfully, Governor Youngkin just pardoned Mark Houck, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for defending his son. And perhaps most of all, as a Texan, and for all of us, particularly a few New Yorkers these days, perhaps people are paying attention to a border that is so devastatingly broken that Americans are dying. How many moms do I have to sit next to in another round table in Texas who lost their son or their daughter to fentanyl? How many migrants have to die in the back of a tractor trailer in San Antonio? How many have to die in the Rio Grande? How many girls have to get sold in the sex trafficking trade before this body will wake up and stop an out-of-control president? Enough. Why would we fund that? That's my question to the Republican leadership. Why will you fund that? Let me be very clear. I will not continue to fund a government at war with the American people. We are here to change it. It is time to end it, and I'm proud to stand with these patriots to do that. I'm going to yield to the Senator from Utah, Mike Lee.
We're $33 million in debt for one reason. We're doing it wrong. This is how we do it. This is how we spend in Washington. We tie every single spending item to every other spending item. And then members of Congress are told, you've got to pass all of it in order to get to it. You want to fund the troops, you want to fund Social Security, you want to fund this, that, or the other. And you have to fund everything else in between with no opportunity. So, comes about usually as we approach the end of a spending period, as we now are, on September 30th, we'll run out of money at midnight. At some point in the days leading up to that, typically what will happen is this. A small handful of appropriators will write something up with a push from the law firm of Schumer, McConnell, McCarthy, and Jeffries. It'll materialize. So, out of nowhere, here it is. Usually there's a few hours to go. You've got to pass this thing, and if you don't, there'll be a shutdown. If there's a shutdown, we won't blame you for that. But hey, vote how you want. You will have no opportunity to amend this. You will have no opportunity to read it, to understand what's in it, to share it with your constituents, to object to it, to improve it. To contact nothing. So the law firm of Schumer, McConnell, Pelosi, Schumer, McConnell, McCarthy, and Jeffries.
Thank you. Finally calls it out.
And what happens is almost every member of Congress is cut out of that process. And what that means is that the hundreds of millions of people that most members of Congress represent are in turn cut out of the process. This process will continue. And its deadly deficit and debt ushering consequences will continue to devastate America until it no longer works. But it will work as long as members vote for this. It's time for the American people to expect more. It's time to expect an actual process and for members of Congress to have a say. It's now my privilege to turn the microphone over to someone whose hairstyle I recently chose to emulate. A gift to the American people and American patriot Kevin Robinson, President of the Heritage Foundation. I'm here to talk about the millions of Americans who don't care about they don't care about a conversation about a continuing resolution. To them, that's just DC speak that gets in the way of what they're feeling. They're feeling, on the one hand, the greatest inflation that we have felt in decades. A direct result, not just of overspending, which is what a short-term resolution but cowardice, political cowardice, by men and women who are elected to do better.
Kind of like Pence.
If you want the American people to continue to be disaffected, disillusioned, desperate for some sort of solution, then pass the continuing resolution. Talk about a shutdown, but in fact, that's not that. The House of Representatives mustered 218 votes for a great piece of legislation that was fiscally conservative. And then on another occasion, they mustered 218 votes for another great piece of legislation, which my friend, fellow Texan, Chip Roy talked about, and that is securing the southern border. Let that be the guide. That's the city. It's only in D.C. would this be complicated. And so for us at the Heritage Foundation, we're really motivated by working with all of these women behind DR. And I think about our new friend, Elise Tambuga in Texas, who just in March of this year lost her mother and her 7-year-old daughter because a human smuggler with 11 illegal aliens in his truck got into an accident with the passing a continuing resolution funds the lawlessness and the fighting insecure border. It is imperative that we think more boldly. In fact, the Heritage Foundation is very grateful to stand with all these people behind us, and I'm grateful for the Thanks, Joe.
I now believe that most politicians in Washington, D.C. don't believe in gravity. They don't believe in gravity. And I disagree with gravity. It's not the ball that gets you, it's the sudden stop. Well, we're on a sudden stop with the economy national issues of overspending. I'm tired of it. As this group behind me has said, and I'm not going to read you all the list. Y'all know overspending. But I'm tired of politicians thinking of one thing that's not having the courage to back it up. Anybody, any Republican, I mean, it's some Democrats. I know they're focused on me. They're going to vote. Anybody that votes for funds all of the stuff that is absolutely insane and putting us in dire at the down board. How many people have big phone calls I got? A good friend of mine's son was shot and killed. How long are we going to have the kids on our back? Folks, now is the time. Now is the time to stand up. And whatever it is, we got rolled over that city. We're not going to get rolled again now. We're going to use our votes to defund CR. I'm not voting for it. Many aren't, because it funds all the bad things that we say we are against. So I hope you will report this. This country has not security, national security, if not down. I call on Jimmy Beth Martin.
I'm Jenny Beth Martin with Tea Party Patriots Action. I'm here today on behalf of the here today on behalf of the 3 million supporters and members of Tea Party Patriots Action who support the House Freedom Caucus because the HFC is fighting to break the endless cycle of tax and spend, borrow and spend, and spend and spend. Because the Freedom Caucus knows we simply cannot sustain the reckless spending. We need to cut spending. I'm also here today because the House Freedom Caucus is fighting to get the Biden administration to do its job and enforce our immigration laws. The Democrat governor of Massachusetts just declared a state of emergency. The Democrat governor of New York begging Washington for help. The Democrat mayor of New York City said illegal immigration is going to destroy the city. All because the Biden administration won't keep our nation's borders secure. So I have a simple message on behalf of our 3 million supporters. No security, no funding. Add the language of the Secure the Border Act to the continuing resolution and cut spending, or don't expect to see it pass. No security, no funding.
Good job. I'm tired of that. Ladies and gentlemen, do you remember in January? When we took 4 days to send this speech? All of being said, if we were going to, that 4 days of delay was going to horrifically delay the work of a Republican majority in the House.
Haven't done anything.
It's possible that we are now standing 8 months later
Thank you.
and do not have a spending plan
Thank you.
that 218 members are prepared to support on the floor? Can you possibly account for that if you're the person responsible? Why is it
leadership proposal, every tough initiative that has been formed and offered and adopted in this Republican majority has come out of these the House Freedom Caucus, the limit safe road proposal, HR 2. Why is that? Where are the other ideas from the remainder of the Republican Congress? Are we really walking into this month, return from recess, a couple of weeks out from the spending deadline and being told that we've got to support a clean CR? I fought over the debt ceiling debacle, and there's one idea that epitomized the problems that we face. It wasn't the speaker that said that on his own, unilaterally make the decision not to move the debt ceiling out. The first quarter of 2024 played a central role in our next presidential election in the state associated. Why is it decide to push it out to the beginning of the next year, 2025? Why? Because he was concerned about entering into another negotiation with Joe Biden. He was saying how astonishing that is in itself. But how does one who is leading and anticipating in a divided government moving forward on policies critical to the American unless there's a negotiation, unless there's an opportunity to negotiate? The opportunity to negotiate on behalf of the American people arrives again right now. And leadership means seizing that opportunity and doing something for the American people. Passivity, standing still, giving in, telling us that the Senate will challenge, that does not answer the call. I yield the white milk. Thanks for coming today. I'm a Marine veteran. I hate to have to say this, but I would not want my son or daughter to serve the state military. I say that even though one of my grandmothers served in War II, both my grandfathers served in War II, my father served in Vietnam. I had 3 deployments to Iraq. Just one example of why I feel this way. Right now, General C.P. Brown has been nominated to be the chairman of the staff. Aside from the serious command and readiness failures, General C. Brown has openly advocated for systemic racism and sexism and promotion of clear violations of what would happen if any other senior officer tried to promotion for preference of white man? They'd be court-martialed. This man is being promoted. Why are we funding him? Over a third of the senior military officers that are currently being held espouse similar views. We have a weaponization of the DOJ and the FBI. Political motives are being targeted. Different opinions are treated differently than those of the community showing very real constitutional process. And I fully support impeachment, but impeachment is not a replacement for accountability, government funding, and power of the purse. We find ourselves hearing from those on the left right now that
shut it down.
Shut down American communities for well over a year, who destroyed tens of millions of families, small businesses, schools, and churches. They will block government funding if it happens to fix many of these problems. That's problematic. Republicans should challenge them to do so by putting forward CR that legitimately addresses including border security, COVID therapy, and the national debt. Finally, I applaud all of those conservative leaders who are signaling that enough is enough. It's finally time for Republicans to take Now, back in January, we fought to fundamentally alter the way this institution works. We fought to restore the people's house. And while we were successful in delivering transformational change, our fight doesn't end there. In the early summer months, we fought against the Biden-McCarthy Fiscal Irresponsibility Act because this spendthrift deal was disastrous for our nation's financial future. Now we're faced with the battle of funding the government. And just as before, we're not interested in giving up when the going gets tough. We're not interested in allowing Washington to revert back to serving the swamp instead of serving the American people. And we certainly aren't interested in rubber stamping the big government socialist agenda of Joe Biden,
Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi or their out-of-control spending levels and woke policies from the lash Congress. The country gave House Republicans the majority to change the course of Congress, greenlighting a so-called clean or unqualified or blind CR is completely out of the question. It would endanger the Republican majority and endanger Speaker McCarthy's leadership. We will not kick the can of addressing excessive government spending down the road again in order to buy the Uniparty more time to release in another horrendous backroom deal. Such a decision would not only lead us to fail in delivering on our promises, but would ultimately fail the American people who sent us here to fix this broken system. As a new and conservative appropriator, my top priority remains passing each of the 12 appropriation bills in a conservative and fiscally responsible manner, meaning true FY22 top-level spending, just as we vowed. If our Republican colleagues share this goal, then the work to achieve it. Now, in terms of a short-term solution, I will oppose any CR that fails to include the qualifications that my House Freedom Caucus colleagues and I have outlined. That means the significantly increased border security of H.R. 2. After all, we all voted for it. Eliminating the weaponization of the Department of Justice and ending the woke policies that continue to undermine our military's combat readiness.
Yes.
Furthermore, I will also oppose any additional blank check for Ukraine. We simply cannot continue funding wasteful,
Money laundering
reckless,
scheme
woke policies that are destroying
for the 10% big guy.
capitulating to the swamp. Real change on behalf of the American people. I'd now like to turn it over to the President of Freedom Works.
The single greatest threat to the United States is not China, it's not AI, it's our debt. It's $32 trillion today. In less than 10 years, it's $50 trillion. So we ought to be back here in 10 years dealing with $50 trillion in debt. We know this problem is coming. Specifically transferring all this debt to future generations is absolutely immoral. It's absolutely immoral. I'm so proud of these folks for coming here and actually taking on this issue. It's a thorny issue. But what's really ironic to me is that a lot of these folks back here, I'd say a lot of millennial voters aren't exactly supporting them, right? They tend to vote more left. This is the only group in town that's actually defending the millennial interests. They're standing here for future generations that don't even support them. That's crazy. But I applaud them for doing this. I applaud them for stepping up for future voters. So 10 years, we don't have to have another stupid press conference about our debt. Let's actually start dealing with it now. So I'm going to turn it over to Congressman Good.
All right.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you to my colleagues. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. We have a Republican majority, and yet we are on the verge of a $2 trillion deficit with the Republican majority and about to spend $7 trillion this fiscal year. We don't need a Republican majority to do that. January was about us not doing what we've always done and expecting to get a different result. January was about us, when we have the majority, not passing major spending bills with a majority of Democrat votes. And yet, we had a coalition of conservative policy making going on through April until the failed Responsibility Act. And what was the failed Responsibility Act? That was when Republicans and Democrats came together, minus the people behind me, came together and raised the debt ceiling to an unlimited amount through January of 25. As much as we in Congress can come together and gleefully spend until January of 25. And there's one thing Congress is good at, is spending money. That's why we have, as others have noted, $32 trillion national debt, on our way to 30, probably 35 by the time this Congress is finished, a year and a half from now, over $100,000 per American citizen. With a Republican majority, when we campaigned on fiscal responsibility, when we campaigned on cutting our spending, when we campaigned on fighting for Republican policies and reversing the harmful Biden, Pelosi, Schumer policies under which the American people are suffering today. And the days of reckless spending without consequence are over. We're seeing record inflation, 40-year high inflation because of the massive spending. We're seeing interest rates raised in a futile attempt to combat the the inflation that we called through our spending, and those interest rates are further crushing the American people. And yes, we're seeing our credit rating lowered for only the second time in history, which further causes interest rates to go up and further oppresses the American people. And yet we cannot get our Republican conference to come together and pass 12 appropriation bills on time that cut our spending with only the modest goal of going to 2022 levels overall, 2019 pre-COVID for non-defense discretionary. That is a modest, embarrassing low $115 billion cut when we're running a 100 monthly deficit. There's some disagreement on how far we should go. There's some disagreement on what policies to put first, but fight for something for the American people. They didn't elect a Republican majority to cave to the Democrats once again. I call on the speaker. We call
Vacate.
on the speaker to be a
Vacate him.
transformational speaker that for once stares down the White House, stares down the Senate, and stands strong for the American people and says no. We can pass all of our appropriation bills, maybe not by September 30, unless, you know what, we work. You guys are ready to work the last week in September, right? Don't send us home that last week in September. Keep us here to pass our spending bills, advancing Republican priorities, and cutting back to the pre-COVID levels. And then if Schumer wants another Schumer shutdown, let him have it, and let him defend it to the American people. So I stand here with my colleagues today in solidarity to fight for the American people. And I yield now to Dave McIntosh of Club for Growth.
Kevin ain't going to do it. Eject him.
You all have heard very eloquent remarks today. I'll keep mine brief. Woke deficit spending is ruining this country. It's time that it stops. These men and women are the leaders carrying that message. Club for Growth will stand behind them as they work with Speaker McCarthy to bring forward a bill that stops deficit spending and runaway ruin. I commend them and I thank them for their efforts. Well, I thank you all for being here. Thank you to my colleagues. You know, the American people are sick and tired of funding the priorities of Washington's police. The American people are sick and tired of a woke and weaponized Justice Department. And the American people are sick and tired of a border that is so porous that we have hundreds of thousands of people coming across monthly. We have 85,000 children that are unaccounted for. I was just in Tucson, and I went south to the border. You have miles and miles of fence. And roughly every quarter of a mile, our government has cut holes in the fence. The so-called deer crossing, there was no deer tracks. I'm a country boy from Tennessee. There was footprints, there was carpet shoes used by the cartel, and there was paraphernalia. I found birth control of a woman who couldn't afford to pay her fare, so she had to work it off on her journey. These feckless policies of this inept, corrupt administration,
McCarthy too.
We will not fund. It is time that we draw a line in the sand and say, hell no. This economy is like the Titanic. It's on its course. There's a collision ahead, and if we don't correct course, the outcome will be catastrophic. I yield to the President.
I represent members of the grassroots organization. We represent over 7 million Americans in every state and every congressional district. Regardless of whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, or you live in a red district or a blue district, the border crisis affects all of us. But the people who affect the most of us are low income, working class, and recent immigrants who have to jobs, scarce federal resources, healthcare resources, and affordable housing. Their children are overcrowded public schools, their wages are stagnating, and their roads are full of storms. The House of Representatives has already passed two solutions to the border crisis, H.R. 2 The House must attach Measure 2 in its spending bill and pass that. No security, no funding. Thank you very much, and I am moving over.
Congressman Self.
Thank you for being here. You have heard very eloquently from my colleagues. I appreciate the senators being here to support us. This is the opportunity for the House of Representatives to do its job. I just got back from what euphemistically called the August recess. I want to share two things with you. First of all, last Thursday night, I was with a group of my constituents who are so frustrated with the federal government. The spending, the tyranny against the citizens. It was amazing to me to hear what they are so frustrated, even angry about. The second thing is I visited several food pantries in my district over the recess. Both of them, plus one just outside of my district, told me that their surge and their Bidenomics is worse than the COVID surge. Think about that. Bidenomics is torching the American family. Those are two mainstream stories that I want you to focus on. Okay, we can talk theory, we can talk esoteric theory all day long, but our families are free. Let's get the job done. Let's do our job in the House of Representatives, and I will turn this over to Andy Roth.
Good afternoon. My name is Andy Roth. I'm president of the State Freedom Caucus Network. My job is to help state lawmakers create state freedom caucuses all across the country. No security, no funding is the only sane and responsible path forward in a country where we are $32 trillion in debt. Hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens are crossing the border unimpeded, and our justice system is weaponized against the Biden regime's political opponents. Pretending that these are not existential problems, trying to paper over these issues with increased earmark spending and yet another blank check for Ukraine is actually insane. To the House Freedom Caucus members behind me, all of our State Freedom Caucus members are forced to behind me. We have 135 state lawmakers, 11 states representing millions of hardworking Americans. Arizona, Illinois, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Idaho, Georgia, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, Louisiana, Mississippi, our members of standing and cheering, letting their constituents know who the real fighters are. Who is standing in the way. We all know you're going to face strong conditions. Thank you for it. We're growing to see your support. Let's go. Everything that needs to happen to restore American stability and financial security, border security, sanity within our federal government. Got to focus and target on American citizens. Yeah. And you save our country or lose it. And a lot of that fighting that happened in the continuing resolution where folks voted no now.
asking us to support a CR that represents Democrat policies and insane levels of spending that we've already voted no on. Well, we're prepared to work with our colleagues within the Republican to come together ultimately and pass these appropriation bills. We're working right now, our officers and our staff, to make that happen. We call upon the American people and with us. We don't change the trajectory of the young Americans not going to have $2 trillion deficit spending this year. So the Treasury prints Treasury bond, 20-year Treasury bond. The summer bond, rather than what's like for that? What are you going to do in 2043? What are you young Americans going to do in 20 years when your federal government, with the full faith and credit of your United States Treasury, are constitutionally bound to service $2 trillion of debt in that year? 1/5 of the federal revenue. You have no discretionary spending. The total amount of discretionary spending